Less thinking about who's going to say what. The strange thing is that all our lives it's like we're walking around with a mirror in our hands. But not our own, but someone else's. We are constantly checking how they see us, what they will think, how it would look from the outside. Whether it's hairstyle, profession, who you live with, everything is under the microscope of the public gaze. And then, age comes. And something clicks. You know, I thought for a long time that with time I would start to lose the clarity of my vision or forget where I put my glasses, which, by the way, does happen. But it turns out that something else is being lost, the fear of being different. And that, oddly enough, is a huge gift. After 70, you've seen and heard enough to realize, people are always thinking something. Always. And, truth be told, most often to themselves. So all that worrying about what they'll say ends up being, well, empty air. I was sitting in the park eating ice cream. Alone. In January. A couple of teenagers were giggling nearby, the old guy's a weirdo. So. It tasted good. I'm alive. I'm in a good mood. And I don't have to explain that to anyone. It's not about indifference, no. I still appreciate being listened to, or if someone says a warm word. It's just that now it's not a directive. I give myself permission to be who I am. And that's the huge difference. It's liberating. It's like wearing a tight coat that doesn't fit, and now I finally take it off and breathe. By the way, you know, it's a lot easier to say no at this age. I mean, really. Not because I've become unhealthy, but because you know the value of your time and nerves. If before I went to some meetings, out of decency, or took part in other people's projects, not to offend, now, if I don't want to, I don't go. Without feeling guilty. Because it's my life. My energy. And my right to choose. I haven't gotten tougher, I've gotten more honest. And, come to think of it, maybe I should have started practicing this when I was in my 40s. But as they say, better later than never. So yes, the opinion of others ceases to carry weight, not out of pride, but out of maturity. Because at some point you realize that all this chasing for approval is like running in circles. And the only person whose opinion really matters is yourself. That's the major turning point. And it doesn't come with thunder, it comes with silence. Calm, warm, so, inwardly secure. The accumulation of unnecessary things. Honestly, if someone 30 years ago told me that one day I would start to get rid of things that I used to keep as the apple of my eye, I would have just waved my hand. You know, the closets were filling up, the garage could barely close. Everything seemed necessary, valuable, memorable. And it seemed like the more the better. Hoarding is in our blood. What if it comes in handy? And then you get older. And you start to look at all this good stuff with completely different eyes. I once opened an old drawer in my dresser. There are letters, cassettes, some broken watches, and for some reason a package from a phone from 2005. And I'm sitting there, holding it in my hands, and I catch myself thinking, why? For whom? For what? You see, there comes a time when you stop associating your value with what you have. A collection of glasses, 3 almost identical coats, a set of 5 coffee machines, yes, I had such a period. All this suddenly begins to seem not like wealth, but, how shall I say, a burden. It fills not only the shelves, but also your head. And it doesn't let you breathe freely. I've started to clear out the space little by little. Without fanaticism, of course. But with the understanding that the less junk around, the more silence inside. It's like clearing space for something new, impressions, sensations, communication. By the way, throwing out is not always about trash. Sometimes it's an act of gratitude. I had an old jacket that I wore on my first date with my wife. I kept it for 40 years. And then I realized that memory isn't in the fabric. It's in the heart. And in the photo album, by the way. And the thing is, as you get older, you start to appreciate simplicity. Not poverty, but simplicity. When everything you need is at your fingertips and nothing unnecessary is dragging you down. Like a backpack, which used to be stuffed with all sorts of just in case, but now it contains a thermos, a book and glasses. And that's enough. You know, sometimes I walk around the house and suddenly think, if I had to leave tomorrow, what would I take with me? The answer is surprisingly short. A couple pictures, a book, a sweater, and that's it. Because everything truly important is already with me, in my head, in my soul, in the people I love. So hoarding is a thing that only makes sense for so long. Until you realize that true value is not what costs money. It's what makes you smile. And preferably something that doesn't sit in a box. Meetings without joy. Tell me, have you ever had such a thing? You are called somewhere, like, you have to go, and you already feel that everything inside is shrinking? I don't feel like going. Not even a little bit. But it seems inconvenient to refuse. Aunt Lucia will be offended, a colleague will be buzzing her ears, and the neighbor will be squinting until the next meeting. I was uncomfortable refusing until I was 65. I went. To birthdays, to some strange exhibitions, to endless tea parties with people with whom I have long been out of my way. Just because, it's the custom, because, they called us, because, it's polite. And every time I came home exhausted. Not because I was physically tired, but because I was putting my energy where no one needed it. Not them, not me. And then I woke up one morning after another, I should have gone, and suddenly I thought, stop. Who says I owe anyone anything? Why am I wasting hours of my life socializing with people I'm not happy with? It's like listening to music you can't stand just because it's in fashion. And so since then, I've slowly started to say no. Not rudely, not harshly, not with drama. Just honestly, thanks for the invitation, but I'm not going. Or, I'd rather be home, quiet. And, you know, nobody died. Some people were surprised, some people fell off, but overall, life got easier. Freer. Now I choose who to be with. If a conversation isn't enjoyable, I don't have it. If a meeting isn't fulfilling, I don't go into it. Because every day is no longer a rehearsal, no longer a draft. It's my life, and it's going on right now. And if I want to spend the evening not in a noisy company, but just on the veranda with a book and a cat on my lap, it's okay. It's even, I would say, a luxury. By the way, it's a funny thing, when you start to give up unnecessary things, only the real thing remains in life. Those who truly care about you. The ones you can be quiet with and it's warm. Someone you don't have to pretend with. And believe me, it's better to have 5 such people than 50 acquaintances for the sake of decency. So yes, social engagements without joy. Thanks, but no. After age 65, you begin to realize that real courtesy is honesty. And respect for yourself, first and foremost. The pursuit of beauty. God, when I was young, I got tired of that constant, you gotta look good. I mean, honestly. I think I've spent more time in front of the mirror than in the bedroom since I was 25. Creams, diets, keep your posture, don't you dare go out in your bathrobe in the yard. And if, God forbid, a wrinkle appeared, it was the end of the world. It's like your forehead is a poster of your inadequacy. Especially nowadays, when every screen is waving to you with perfect smooth, eternally young faces, and even grandmothers look like glossy versions of themselves. As if getting older is unnatural. Like you're obligated to be in shape all the time. And then there are those polite grimaces from acquaintances, "You're not badly preserved for your age." Thanks, man, it's like a can of canned goods. But that's what happens after you're 65, you suddenly let it all go. Not right away, of course. At first, you try to keep up, even if you're less and less strong. But then it's like you realize, who are you proving what to? I look in the mirror and see the wrinkles, but I know that behind each of them there is a story. Not a commercial one, a real one. This one is from the long nights when I couldn't sleep because of my son who went off to the army. This one is from laughing when we celebrated my mom's 80th birthday as a family. And this crease between my eyebrows is from thinking too much about how to do everything in time and not let anyone down. It's all mine. It's my life. Why should I be ashamed of it? And one more thing, after 65, you start to notice, beauty is in other things. It's not in the smoothness of your skin or the size of your waist. It is in how a man listens, how he speaks, how he knows how to be close to you, does not interfere with advice. The way a woman makes you tea and sits next to you in silence. The way a man pulls out a warm scarf and wraps it around your shoulders without saying a word. When you stop wearing other people's standards, you get closer to yourself. And that, you know, is much more beautiful than any Photoshop. You begin to feel yourself not as an object to be tidied up, but as a living, real person, with a body that has not betrayed you, but carried you through the decades. And that body deserves respect, not sentences. So yes, youth is passing away. But confidence, serenity, acceptance, it comes. And if I have to choose between a wrinkle-free face and a life with no complaints about myself, I'll choose the latter. No doubt about it. Things that don't bring you joy anymore. Sometimes, you know, you catch yourself doing things. Just because you're used to it. Or because you've always done it. I've had a hobby for 20 years, cross-stitching. It's a classic. Shelves of thread, schemes, neat hoops, cozy light of the lamp. It seemed like forever. It was mine. Even friends said, "Anya without embroidery, not Anya." And then it stopped pleasing. At some point I sat down with another scheme, and inside, empty. No fire, no pleasure. Only fatigue. I used to embroider as if I was listening to music, each thread, like a note. But here, just mechanics. And I realized, this is no longer for me. At first, of course, there was an inner protest. Like, how is it, to abandon that, which for so many years was a part of you? And then I was relieved. Because, honestly, holding on to an old hobby only out of a sense of duty, well, it's like wearing shoes that you once liked, but now they're too tight. Beautiful, yes. But they're not yours anymore. And after 65 you begin to realize that not everything that was yours 20 years ago should be yours now. People change. Interests change too. And it's not a betrayal of yourself, it's the opposite, honesty. I started trying new things. Not right away, of course. At first, I just stopped picking up needles. And then I went to yoga for the elderly. Can you imagine? Anya and yoga. I would have laughed myself. But it turned out to be my thing. Slow, thoughtful, no racing. Just being in the body and feeling it move. I also tried watercolor. And although I have crooked houses and crooked trees, but from the process itself, hi. And recently I've been drawn to making clay cups. Such, uneven, alive. By the way, one thing I used to underestimate is the joy of learning anew. As you get older, you become a little less demanding of yourself. You don't expect a masterpiece the first time. And there's such freedom in that. You can be not perfect, you can just play. And you know, I began to observe my acquaintances. Many of them at their age hold on to old hobbies out of fear. Like, what if something new doesn't work out? But honestly, isn't it scarier to get stuck in an activity that hasn't warmed up for a long time? So after 65, it's a good time to dust off the old wants. Remembering what you wanted to do but didn't get around to. Not for the sake of usefulness, not for the sake of results, but just for the sake of pleasure. You're not filing a report to the tax office, you're living. Toxic relationships, stop putting up with it. You know what I realized after 65? Not all the people I've been around are really worth it. That doesn't come right away, by the way. For years, you put up with it, you turn a blind eye, you justify it. Because that's the way it's done. Because, well, it's a sister. Or, he's just a difficult person, but we've been friends since we were kids. Or, what will they say if I stop talking to them? And, frankly speaking, in the past it was not customary to break off contact so easily. Now they say, if a person does not give you strength, leave. What was it like before? Be patient, smooth out the edges, look for a compromise, don't take the quarrel out of the house. Well, we were patient. For years. Decades. Absorbed other people's dissatisfaction, irritation, even anger, as if this is a normal relationship. And then you wake up in the morning and realize you're tired. Not from old age, not from illness, from people. From their complaints, their eternal criticism, their fake smiles. From conversations, after which you don't feel warmth, only emptiness. And here at this age suddenly comes such a clear thought, I no longer owe anyone anything. And I don't have to listen to anyone if it hurts me. It's like a click, and that's it. Click, and you realize that you no longer have the strength for people with whom you cannot be yourself. I knew a girl, Marina. We'd been in touch for probably 30 years. Tea, gossip, birthdays. It seemed like friendship. And then, when I got seriously ill, she didn't show up. Not a flower, not a phone call. And when I wrote to her, she said, oh, I had things to do. And she said something like, you're always whining, you're hard to be around. Can you believe that? And that's when I decided, that's it. I don't want any more friends like that. I deleted the number, I didn't reply to the message. I was relieved. Much. It's not revenge, it's not anger. It's defense. You're just protecting your space. Your inner peace. After 65, you feel especially keenly who energizes you, and who just drains your strength. As you get older, your emotions become thinner, your perceptions deeper. And a person who 20 years ago seemed just a little toxic, now feels like a deafening weight on your shoulders. Just physically. And here's the important thing, no one has to be there for you. Even if you've known each other a long time. Even if it's a relative. Even if you were close once. People change. And you have the right to walk away if it stops being a good thing. I'm surrounded by very different people now. They're few. But they're easy. You can be quiet with them, laugh with them, talk about silly things or eternal things, and it's all real. And it's not about perfect people. They're just kind. They're warm. You know. So, if you feel like you feel bad after talking to someone, don't ignore it. Respect yourself enough to choose who comes into your life. Especially now. Especially when every day is precious. When you compare yourself to others, you lose yourself. Oh, if someone had told me earlier, how many nerves I would have saved if I had stopped comparing my life with other people's. It's a trap, really, and we fall into it again and again. Especially women, by the way. Someone is always whispering to us, even if quietly, but her grandchildren have already given birth to grandchildren, and that one still runs in heels, and that one's husband still has flowers. And that's it. Let's go. And then you look in the mirror and it's like you're not you anymore. And someone else's failed version, not so slim, not so active, not so in demand. And we used to live by that, evaluations, comparisons, you have to fit in. A good mother, a faithful wife, an active citizen, a well-groomed woman. Everything is necessary, everything is necessary. And there was no time left for ourselves. But you know what's funny? After 65, it's like you throw off that old suit of other people's expectations. At some point you wake up and you realize, well, what if I had a completely different route? What if I didn't have to look like my neighbor Larissa or be as successful as my former colleague from accounting? Everyone has their own path. Their own rakes, their own highs, their own strange twists and turns. And comparing them is like measuring a banana and a tangerine with a ruler. What's the point? I once saw a photo of my age in social networks, all so radiant, against a background of palm trees, in a dress with an open back. Well, honestly, at first it stung. Like, well, and I'm in a robe and knitting. And then I thought, do I even want to go there? Me, to the palm trees? Or is it just a reflex, to compare and then feel worse? And you know what, no, I don't. I'm fine here right now. With tea, a cat on my lap, a book in my hand and the smell of apple pie in the oven. This is my rhythm. It's my life. And it's good. It's not better, it's not worse. It's just my own. When you let go of that comparison, it's easier to breathe. It does. It makes room for gratitude. For what is. For what was. For being here at all, whole, alive, with this baggage of what you've experienced, loved, even lost, but your own. And another thing, at this age, you can finally allow yourself to be not the best version, but the real you. As you are. With wrinkles, with fatigue, with the habit of forgetting where you put your glasses. And yet, with a huge, warm heart that has already seen a lot. And still loves. So if next time you want to think, here they have, here she has, just remind yourself, I'm like this. And that's okay too. Old goals, when you don't have to. Honestly, sometimes you sit in the morning with a cup of coffee, looking out the window, and suddenly it pops into your head, I used to want to open my own bakery. Or, I dreamed of learning Spanish and going to Barcelona. And that's when a strange thing starts to happen, either a slight sadness, or a prick of guilt, or something unformed but pulling you down. And then, stop. Question, do I still want it now? Or is it just an old dream that once warmed my soul, but now it no longer warms me, but rather hangs around my neck as a reminder of unfulfilled? That's what we need to deal with. Because, really, not all goals should follow us for the rest of our lives like the tail of a comet. There are some that were relevant then, at a certain age, in that context. And there's nothing wrong with that. We change. Our priorities change, even more so. I used to feel like I had to achieve something to feel complete. You know, like they say in magazines, a woman realized. And under this realized for some reason always hides career, business, marathons, perfect grandchildren, minimalism in the interior and lavender field on the avatar. And now? Now I look at the list of goals that I used to write down in my notebook and think, why? Why do I need to study languages or write a column for a glossy now? I'm at a different point. I'm at a different point. Right now, my goal is to keep my heart at ease. I don't want my back to hurt in the morning. I want my daughter to come home more often. To be able to sit in silence in the evening, and to get up in the morning with pleasure. And these are also goals. Only different. Softer. Warmer. For myself, not for someone else. Not to impress, not to prove, but to feel. I'm not saying you shouldn't dream. I do. Even now, by the way, I sometimes fantasize about going to the countryside in the summer and planting a garden. Or take an art course. But this is no longer a must by next year. It's like an opportunity. It's a choice. And it gives you a high. We often confuse outdated goals with failure. Like if you haven't done it, you're a failure. But if you think about it, it's like when you hold on to an old dress that you haven't worn in a long time, but you're sorry to throw away. It seems beautiful, but it doesn't fit anymore, it doesn't please you, and in general, it's not about now. And so it is with goals. Some you need to let go of with gratitude. Not with annoyance, but with understanding, they were important then. And now, I have a different story. And that's okay. Honestly, who says dreams have to be eternal? With age comes this strange but very necessary resolution: you can change. You can want peace instead of recognition. One can give up fighting for achievement and just be. And believe me, there's tremendous power in that, too. Even more than in lists from business diaries. Expecting more from old age than is actually there. To be honest, one of the strangest myths I have come across about old age is the myth that a person should be always in shape. We all know, of course, that age is no reason to give up and not take care of your body. I also don't believe that one should completely switch off from exercise, lounge on the couch, and allow oneself to forget about health. But this constant pressure that, at 65 you should be like a cucumber, is really strange and, frankly speaking, sometimes annoying. Why are we used to thinking that old age is something pictorial, ideal, and if you don't fit this image, then something is wrong? Why, for example, does society insist that older people always look young, with full energy, as if they have not experienced all this long life journey? Yes, in some cases, as we age, we do want to keep ourselves in shape, to feel good. But no one should be obliged to be a superhero, simply by the fact of their age. There are many people who, once they get past 60 to 70, suddenly start pumping hard in gyms, doing yoga and running marathons, as if that's the only way to be normal in old age. And if you're not doing it, it's like you're somehow letting yourself down. But seriously, none of this is something that's really necessary. I can't understand why society is so insistent on these standard things: working out every day, skin care, weight loss. And in doing so, we forget about the most important thing: just living life. This is where it's important not to fall into the trap of stereotypes. Everyone ages differently, with different priorities and goals. Someone really wants to run, do yoga and work on themselves. And someone just wants to quietly watch TV shows, cook home-cooked meals, and take an occasional walk with the grandkids. That's okay too. We live in a world where everyone wants to be beautiful and successful, but the most important thing is not to forget that in old age the most valuable thing is not the outer shell, but inner harmony. You know, a lot of stories from people over 65 who said that it is much more important for them to spend quiet time with their loved ones, without the desire to always look younger anyway, or spend the last strength on workouts. In fact, old age is a great opportunity to just be yourself, without pressure or external demands. That's what I see as the real meaning of maturity. And it's also worth considering that as you get older, your body starts to demand more rest, and that's normal too. It's not a failure, it's not a weakness. It's just that our body, it's not eternal, and even the healthiest people at 65 can have problems with joints or circulation. And it's all part of the natural process. If we didn't have these changes, we probably wouldn't be able to understand what it means to be mature and wise at all. So, at some point, it's worth letting go of all those imposed stereotypes and accepting the fact that it's okay to be old and not perfect, too. And it's much more peaceful when you realize this and don't worry about the fact that, I'm not perfect. Transforming the meaning of life, how to rethink priorities. Ironically, old age is a great opportunity to rethink everything that seemed important before. When you're under 40, you might think the only things that really matter are career, money, and recognition. And as you get older, you not only realize that's not true, but you begin to realize that life, in its true sense, is less about achieving goals and more about enjoying the moment, the depth of relationships, and inner peace. You know, when you're in your 30s, the main goal in life is to be successful and prove to everyone that you're worth something. But the older you get, the more you realize, so what? Why do I have to work my ass off to meet other people's standards? When you're 50, you realize the most important thing is relationships. With people, with the world, with yourself. You start looking for meaning not in conforming to societal expectations, but in living life the way you want to live it. It is great if in this process you still manage to do something useful and necessary for others. But it's much more important to realize what you really enjoy. It seems to me that aging is not only a physical transformation, but also a spiritual one. You start to look at the world differently, you start to appreciate simple moments. It can be anything: morning coffee, a walk in an old park, reading your favorite book. I, for one, have come to value time with loved ones more than anything else as I get older. I don't want to chase success, I just want to connect with those close to me and live life at my own pace. So it's important to learn to ask yourself questions: what's really important to me? And it doesn't matter how old you are. What matters is how you perceive the world around you and how you define your life.